It's Friday, May 9th, 2014. I'm Jimmy Principe.
I'm Sydney Foster.
And I'm Trey Comstock. Put in your final orders because this is Tech's Last Call, episode 74. Your last call for Tech News of the Week. Tonight, Jimmy beats down the door to buy a Surface Mini. Sydney wishes it would all be over, at least when it comes to Samsung and Apple. And I spy on Silicon Valley and realize I don't want to live there. But we start tonight with Apple's multi-billion-dollar grasp at coolness.
So, did you forget about Dre, Trey? Because Apple sure didn't. This week, Apple acquired the headphone and music streaming company Beats Electronics to the tune of $3.2 billion. Or, you guessed it, just over 3 Instagrams.
Or one-third of a...
WhatsApp. So it's important to note that this has not actually been officially announced. We have sources at the Financial Times that are stating this, as well as video.
And sources, one of the sources is Dr. Dre.
Yeah, there was a video that was posted on Facebook by Tyrese Gibson.
Famous from Too Fast to Too Furious.
And had
which is the only thing I care
about. Dre in it, congratulating Dr. Dre on being the first billionaire hip-hop artist.
I think Sean Puffy Combs may want to disagree with him on that.
Well, there's that.
And the Olsen twins are also worth $1 billion.
Well, they don't count though. They're barely artists.
I'm just of things that are worth $1 billion. It's Dr. Dre, it's Instagram, and it's the Olsen twins. So
look at your life, look at your choices.
He's really an auspicious company.
I was gonna say that's a club I want to be in.
Now, Beats did just recently launch their Beats music service, which is kind of more of like a Spotify service, which would be a good complement with the iTunes Radio.
Yeah, but it has the sentence.
It does have the sentence, which is a very nice quirk that I kind of like, but. Anyways, that was not the only acquisition that Apple had this week. The second one was quite a bit smaller in scope. They
piled a man.
They recruited a man. His name, Ari Partinen.
He is.
I think.
Sure, he's probably Finnish.
He's probably a very good-looking Finnish man. I don't know. I can say these things. I have not actually seen a picture of him. He was the Lumia photography lead at Nokia, according to his LinkedIn profile. Now, Nokia's Lumia phones have touted a unique PureView sensor derived from the 41-megapixel behemoth that resides in the Lumia 1020 that Trey possesses.
What?
And it was used in all of their phones at various different megapixels. Used oversampling to help with noise and all of these different things.
He's pretty good looking.
Even even to make an 8 megapixel camera really shine in a way that you would not expect it to, looking at other phone cameras and sensors. So, Sydney, do these moves by Apple make good business sense for the long term? And do we think we're going to get any good new products out of it? I want a camera.
You want a camera?
Yeah, an Apple camera, like a DSLR.
Yeah, they have a camera. It's called the iPhone. At least that's what all of their advertising tells me, that this is their camera. But that aside, I don't know. It would be really nice if, of course, Trey's going to argue with this because Trey will tell us that Beats doesn't make good headphones.
They don't.
But maybe we can hope to see
overpriced headphones. There's a difference.
Better earbuds coming with your Apple products.
We already have those. They're called the EarPods.
Yeah.
Kind of silly, but they do work.
I don't know. But as far as marketing and branding, it's definitely it's. I think it's a good move for Apple because it kind of hits another. Not necessarily a different market from where they usually are popular, but kind of I don't know how to express this, like a branch off of that higher end market. I don't know. Not that Apple isn't already popular enough, but I'm just thinking about, we have something crazy coming up at school this week, and part of it is a motivational raffle thing to get kids to dress up anyhow. So possible prizes that have been announced is possibly an iPad and possibly some Beats headphones. And guess which ones my teenagers get more excited about? Like, they're all really excited about the Beats headphones and not the iPad. So it does kind of bring in another market as far as advertising. So that's interesting. Personally, the Nokia acquisition of this lovely man Ari is a little bit more interesting to me, just because, again, being an old lady, Beats not necessarily a brand I'm particularly interested in. But
are you a momtographer?
A momtographer, not yet. But yeah, so anything that's going to improve the camera, I think, is more interesting to me than more bass in my phone speaker.
So Trey, are you a momtographer?
I don't even
Is
know
that
what
someone who takes pictures of moms? Because that would be kind of creepy.
Look,
I think they call that stalker.
Let's be clear. Ari's personal website is in Finnish, and he used to work
approve of all things Finnish.
And he used to work at the University of Helsinki.
And his good-looking man.
He's very good looking. So I mean, obviously, Ari is not the main story here. I mean, it's interesting, and I think this could possibly be. I actually kind of hope that he starts developing Apple's image sensors, because they've been relying on Sony for their image sensors, and that's really un-Apple-like.
Yeah, but Sony makes great sensors, so I can't disagree with that.
But at the same time, I feel like their sensors aren't all that innovative. They're good, but Nokia kind of owns the innovative image sensor thing on mobile phones, and one of the things Apple touts as their big thing is that camera. Lindsay Turrentine was on Tech News Today this week, and when asked why does she keep using an iPhone, it's because of the image sensor. And imagine what that would be like if they started to design their own sensor. Because look at what's happened once they started designing their own chips. Keep in mind, they haven't always designed their own mobile chips.
Right.
But with the A series, they're really to do something different. So imagine if they could do that same thing with an image sensor, thanks to this guy. Now, this could lead to a very interesting patent lawsuit.
Right.
It probably will.
You have a piece of Nokia, and you have a piece of Nokia.
Well, I mean,
we'll just see how that
you
falls
get some
out.
Nokia. I mean, you get some Nokia.
Keep in mind that a patent lawsuit would have to be not just idea, but methodology, and he'll know really well what Nokia's methodology is, and so theoretically, he would know really well how to not do it again.
Right.
Theoretically. But looking at Beats, I've heard a bunch of arguments about this, right? So I kind of wrote into our intro that this is a grass, but cool.
Right.
And to a certain extent, I think that's true. Why else do you buy Beats? They're not...
To a certain extent. I think to a greater extent. I mean, Apple's already known as a music... Kind of like from way back. You have the legacy of the iPod and iTunes. iTunes Match is already out there. They've got all the record contracts, so they don't need that.
Yeah, I mean, iTunes Radio is awful, but yeah.
They'll
Well,
make
not
money
awful,
off
just
of the
pointless.
hardware of the headphones.
Oh, that's a good point to raise. So those $300 headphones cost $14 to make. So
Are you freaking kidding me?
yeah,
And then you assume at least another 100% of that for like all the other costs involved.
doesn't matter. Even
It's
if you're
still,
spending double your cost on marketing, let's say
Still
that
$30.
still $30, and you're selling them for 10 times that. This is 1,000.
That's about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's look at that for a second. That's Apple kind of margins, and that's one of the arguments I've heard. They're buying into another high margins business. But why Beats? Because
It's cool.
right. Because it's not good.
By like a Bowers
Right,
and
because-
Wilkins,
so-
for example.
I think it was Harry McCracken, but I don't remember who, threw out this really interesting idea. For only, but in terms of Apple, this is chump change. For $1 billion more, you could own both Spotify and Sennheiser. So
And
why
Sennheiser
didn't you...
makes better headphones?
Much better headphones.
Like,
you could own own whoever, Audio-Technica for a lot less than either of that. But you could own Sennheiser, who their high-end stuff is incredible. And their mid-range stuff is all right. They're a little overpriced, but not terribly.
They're not even that overpriced. It's just that they're
Uncomfortable?
either uncomfortable or overly plasticky. Those are their two problems.
Right, but the sound quality-wise, they're really good. And you could own Spotify, who's leading this market. So this cannot be a play for the streaming service. Because keep in mind, they already bought a streaming service. They bought Lala about 1 million years ago. But they bought Lala. So this isn't about the streaming service.
Streaming service, though.
This is
Even
about...
at the time, it barely counted.
Honestly, I can't think back that far. But this is not a grab, because the streaming service isn't doing very well. This is a grab at cool. And this is a grab at market dominance in Beats headphones, in high-end headphones. But let me pitch this another way. This is a buy into a wearable technology. What is a tech that people are already wearing? That is already socially acceptable, apparently. If you walk around the Emory campus.
I saw a dude running with the Beats, like, the big Beats.
I saw a dude coming out of the mall wearing them, okay?
We have specific school rules against Beats because kids...
Which tells you that it's a problem.
Right, because... Again, the cool factor, everyone wants to walk down the hall wearing your Beats, and then obviously you're not listening to anything that's going on around you.
So this is
definitely pervasive.
This is already a piece of wearable technology that is ingrained in millennial culture.
Yes.
They're not going to wear watches. This is well established. They don't want to wear watches.
No.
What do they want to wear? They want to wear Beats headphones. So Apple has hired fashion designers. This week announced biomedical folks.
So we're just waiting on our Burberry Beats at this point.
And Beats headphones. So these are all fashion or health or wearable related. I think the angle that has not been looked at in this Beats story, and it has been picked to death, is this is a popular wearable technology. And if anyone thinks otherwise about Beats in particular, they are not looking around at millennials at all. And I get it. Like, I'm on a college campus. I have a lovely window into the heart of millennial culture. God, it's awful.
But
it's a effing cesspool.
It's not that hard to figure this out, though.
No, it's not. I mean, ride on the New York subway, right?
Yeah.
Ride on the London tube during the Olympics. Like, Beats had to end up specifically sponsoring the Olympics and giving headphones to every Olympian because so many Olympians were already wearing headphones that the IOC declared that it was that was sponsorship, and since they couldn't wear their Beats headphones for their pregame routine because that would constitute them advertising for Beats. So Beats had to end up sponsoring the Olympics so that everyone could wear Beats headphones.
Wow.
And so every Olympian got a free pair of Beats headphones, and so then you saw them everywhere all over London during that time. I was in London at that time. I saw it. This was hilarious. Okay? Beats.
Unintended consequence.
Beats is fashionable, wearable technology, and the people who have figured out how to make a ridiculous-looking technology that everyone wants to wear.
All the cool kids are doing it.
All the cool kids are doing it. And so I think we need to think about it in the context of the upcoming iWatch. Or the upcoming Apple Wearable initiative.
Yeah, I think it'll be a strategy more than a single device.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, yes, it has to be. Because you've got Google Glass. Good God, who's going to wear that? You've got all of these other watches, and very few of them, really? No,
I won't.
In everyday life? Picture this. You're on a date with your lady friend. Let's start here. This is this is essentially the Kristen Scott Thomas test, okay?
Oh, yeah, it is.
This is the Kristen Scott Thomas test of tech. Okay?
Can you explain it without sounding like a total...
Can you explain
I can't say
the
it.
benefits of this thing without sounding like a total asshole? And if you can do that,
No.
So
Possible.
Google Glass fails the Kristen. By the way, so for those of you who don't know, this is the Top Gear cool test for a car. Could you, on a date, explain the benefits of this car to Kristen Scott Thomas without sounding like a terrible person? And Google Glass, you can't do it. The right kind of watch, you could. Any more than you can explain a Rolex. And these things will be cheaper.
Than a Rolex? I hope so.
Right, well, I find Rolexes, generally speaking, fairly terrible. Just the idea of a $10,000 watch, I think, is a waste of money. But Rich people can waste all the money they want, I guess. Like the guy who got into his Maybach wearing Beats Studio headphones in front of me today. I got a lot of work done this week in terms of tech. So
And Beats watching, apparently.
So I mean, I think this
Trey's
is
on the
This is
Beats
like trend
beat.
spotting.
I think I need to write up this article because I have not heard anyone offer this analysis, and I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Get there first.
Do it, Trey. You heard it here first. Exclusive.
Yeah.
All you other journalists, when
We
you
need
think
to
of this,
title this show Beats is Wearable Technology. There
Title.
we go. Title.
I'll write it.
Yes, Beats is Wearable Technology. Damn it. Maybe not with the damn it.
For emphasis.
Yeah, I think we're missing something. I think because again, the tech press.
Because the tech press and the people who make the tech are not millennials, they're nerdy middle-aged men. No offense to nerdy middle-aged men.
More on that later.
No, many charming ones, but
Beats is not.
Right.
And generally speaking, Apple has not been.
they're still nerdy.
But they weren't.
Also, Johnny Ive.
Johnny Ive.
With the V-necks and the...
Johnny Ive. It's magical and
It is unabashed.
But it's a
unabashedly
different
plastic.
kind of
I almost
cool.
bought myself an unabashedly plastic phone today.
There are worse things. I'm okay with the 5C.
Oh, it's all right. I mean, I was honestly almost
second tier device. I mean, it's fine.
I almost bought myself one. I found another way around so I didn't have to, but I almost did. So speaking of Apple products, they made some money?
Oh, yes. So this week in companies that spend their money fighting over money that is only a fraction of all the money that they make off of all of us peons anyhow, it's Apple and Samsung. Yes, it was deja vu all over again as the two tech giants took to the courtroom with the long-suffering Judge Lucy Coe presiding.
Oh, bless her.
I know. The woman needs... she should sue
She
them
must-
both, really, for just wasting her time. She needs vacation.
St. Lucie Co.
Yes, she'll go into the tech canon of saints. So they took to the courtroom to settle yet more patent disputes. The patent wars drag on forever. So this time, Apple had accused Samsung of infringing on 5 of its patents, while Samsung put forth 2 patents of its own, claiming Apple's infringement. Unlike 2 years ago, however, Samsung did not come out of this particular court visit as the only guilty party. So the ruling that was passed down last Friday found that 3 out of 5 of Apple's patents had been infringed on, and then 1 out of the Samsung's 2 patents. And after the jury reconsidered the damages on Monday, they shifted a few things around, basically from what they had brought down on Friday, but it ended up with the same money totals anyway. It's complicated lawyer stuff that I don't entirely understand. But basically, the verdict
That's how
ended...
they charge so much.
Yeah, money here. It's not even adding up to Instagram, so it just isn't even money that matters.
The 10th of an Instagram.
That's right. So Apple is entitled to $119.6 million rather than the $2.2 billion they had requested. So, ouch.
Yeah, that's the news here.
And Samsung was owed a mere $158,400 rather than their requested $6.2 billion. So, yeah, apparently the jury just doesn't feel as bad for them as they feel for themselves. So I know it's been a very long time since I've been on the podcast, and I'm happy to be back. So I feel that
We're happy to have you
in
back.
celebration of that, it is time for me to ask my all-important signature question, why on earth should I care?
It does not really matter.
I know it matters to Apple and it matters to Samsung, but at this point, is this something that matters to me as a consumer? Is it going to affect anything as far as how I receive services or products from these companies, or is this really just one of those, this is a big tech milestone and here's why kind of moments?
Well, there are 2 things here. One is what this represents for Apple. Apple has been doing a better job at winning these things than they did in this case. And so this does... I mean, I get that Apple still won this case, because
They got more money than Samsung in one, but I heard...
and they also got a higher percentage of what they asked for than Samsung.
Well, that's true. I heard anecdotal, though, that they probably didn't even cover their court costs.
Right. Well, I mean, it's totally irrelevant. Samsung kind of is just in this business of these lawsuits.
The whole thing just seems like a colossal waste of time to me.
It is.
Welcome to the litigious
He's
nature
looking out my window.
Well, I mean, some of this is the heritage of Steve Jobs saying that he was going to declare thermonuclear war. His words, not mine.
Oh, gosh.
Man is, in fact, insane.
And some of this is just, I mean, there's a great write-up in Vanity Fair that I signed that basically lays this out as this is part of Samsung's core business are these lawsuits. And that's crazy. And then you've got to factor in the kind of vague, like, it's a U.S. company against a Korean company in the U.S. court. Who do you think's going to keep winning these things?
Right.
I'm not saying that in particular, but, like, these are jury trials. So let's think about that for a second. And so there's that. And that matters, to the average consumer, this will probably trickle down to very little. Samsung has radically altered their design, and eventually these things may or may not go away. But also keep in mind that this is a proxy fight. This is a proxy fight between Apple and Google. And
Samsung standing in for Google.
With Samsung standing in for Google. But Apple has yet to actually go after Google. But this is really a fight between... There's this great book that on this topic called Dogfight, that this is the fight between Apple and Google, and it gets played out in these court cases. And slowly but surely, Apple has been winning less and less and less.
Well, because their first one they won like $962 million?
Yeah, it was basically $1 billion. And then now we're at $100 million. So the victories are getting smaller, and what we're waiting for is how does this play out with Apple and Google? Because they have this weird relationship, right? So Apple, Google remains the default browser, default search in Safari. And most Google apps are available on iOS.
Actually, an increasingly large number are available with increasingly large feature sets.
Right. But they're no longer the baked-in maps. And Siri is powered by Bing. And to be fair, the entire...
Probably Azure.
No, if it's... Yes, it is powered by Azure. Apple uses...
Really,
Azure.
at this point? I'm going to start charging you 25 cents every time you bring up Azure.
Well,
Who,
and...
me or Trey?
You.
Well, and it's this weird... And it's overall this weird relationship, right? Because Samsung and Apple are also partners.
Right,
Samsung manufactures
Apple's chips.
Manufactures chips and memory, and some displays, I think.
For the MacBook Airs, I think.
Right.
As well as for the iPads.
Yep, and hard drives. So, I mean, there's all kinds of Samsung components all over Apple products. So there's that. And then they sue each other over increasingly minute things. Just increasingly pointless things. So, to answer your question directly, I'm not sure this matters directly for consumers. But I think consumers, to a certain extent, need to understand... This is kind of like understanding where your food gets made for city kids. To a certain extent, you need to understand the battles that are happening to understand why things are the way they are. Why isn't there... What happened to my YouTube app on the home screen of my iPhone? Well, Apple's fighting with Google in the courts through their proxies. It starts to explain why things happen the way they happen. Why can I not import a Google Calendar into my iCloud or vice versa? Because they're fighting with each other.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of weird, though.
But it's because they're fighting with each other. Tooth and nail, as it turns out. So, there's that. So, speaking of things that used to be fighting tooth and nail and Google, what's up with Chromebooks?
Yeah, so this Tuesday, Intel and Google unveiled a new crop of Chromebooks combining the low power requirement of Google's Chrome OS with Intel's new low power, I guess it's not that new anymore, but their low power Bay Trail processor, also known as Atom. Now, there were devices from many manufacturers there, including Asus, Acer, Dell, HP, Lenovo, and a handful of others. Previously, many of these devices ran on ARM-based chips, whether it was Samsung's Exynos chip for their devices or a Qualcomm
Yeah, with some
chip.
sort of Qualcomm chip.
Most of them are running on a Snapdragon processor of some kind. This is kind of a new step. There have been a couple that have had i3 processors in them, but this first round is the first ones that have really had this Bay Trail chip. So the idea is that way it can actually provide sufficient power to run everything you need to on the web, because it's the web.
It is the web.
It is actually the web, as he would happily tell you, because this is one of his projects. So, and not only did we see the widening of the Chromebook category, because we saw like Chrome tops and all-in-ones and Chromebooks and
Chrome top
whatever.
sounds like something that should be on a car.
It is a Chrome top on a car. It's very slick. You like it. You can use it with your Google Glass. But we also heard of some invites being sent out this week to about a Microsoft Surface event that's going to be held on May 20th, which sounds like it will feature both the much rumored Surface Mini.
I think it was an invitation to a small get-together.
It was a
small gathering.
Okay, so this is like the most parsed thing in the entire world.
I love it when
like
these things come out.
small
Like, oh wait,
gathering
look
in
this
quotes.
particular shade of gray that
And
they used right here.
And so because it is a small gathering about a Surface event, maybe they're going to talk about a small Surface.
Or
You guys,
two.
you're full of crap, people.
Well, I don't know. Usually you don't parse. Generally speaking, you parse Apple announcements and don't parse Microsoft announcements.
Right. I think that this is shenanigans. I think that it is a small get-together in that they're not going to rent out like a huge thing. I think that and I don't think that they're going to have a big, like, live on the internet kind of like.
I don't know. The rumor is Satya Nadella is going to be there.
This
is a big deal.
It's going to be a big deal.
I think
And
this
not
is a play on
only-
words.
So here's another big thing. Not only the beginning of this week, it looked like we were going to kind of get this Surface Mini that we've had rumored that it's going to run on a Qualcomm processor of some kind, which is a change for Surface because Surface in the past has run on the Tegra processor
Consistently.
But
the
RT
Nokia 2520 was the main RT that was running on a Qualcomm.
Right.
That was the
main
differentiator
RT.
between them.
So they're like one of the two of them?
Well, I mean, there have been other ones that have floated around, but in terms of like things that matter.
But the other thing that kind of came out this week, surprisingly, was from like Bloomberg and kind of Mary Jo Foley sources, kind of independently, also confirmed that there's going to be some kind of Intel announcement at this Surface event, and we've no idea what it is. It could be an Intel-based 8-inch tablet. It could be a new
Larger tablet.
Or it could just be a new Pro. With what I'm hoping for is like what we talked about last year, where we'll get like a new Pro where it's got the Vapor Mag with the seal without the holes on the sides.
Yeah.
Running a Bay Trail processor.
Yeah.
That
That would be great.
$600, but I don't think we're gonna.
So like the same price. Oh, the problem is that would totally eat the lunch of the Tegra-based Surface 2.
True. Well,
Like
and then
just-
you'd have to find that price point in there somewhere.
$800.
Nah, $700.
Sure.
So Trey, do you think that Intel has finally convinced manufacturers to give its Atom processors another chance after all of this freaking issues with netbooks all those years ago? You remember that before we had dual core
Yeah.
Atom processors.
I had one.
Netbooks used to just crap themselves.
I had one, and I had to stop using it because it was the
dying.
right balance of none of the things.
That was one of those that goes on the list of Trey's devices that were supposed to fix everything and didn't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it had worked as advertised, it would have fixed everything. However, it didn't have the battery life it even claimed to
I
have.
feel like you both should write up your list officially.
Of
We both have a list.
Sure. But I mean, that certainly was one of them. Then, and the real solution turns out was wait 3 years and get a MacBook Air. That was actually the solution to my problem.
Because you went from the netbook to the iPad to the MacBook Air.
Yeah, it was the netbook to the iPad to the MacBook Air.
That was the progression, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and now it's kind of like my solution seems to be an 11-inch MacBook Air and an iPad Mini Retina. And that's a good place to be.
It gets better.
I mean,
But but look, that architecture is no longer crap. Like Bay Trail apparently is all right.
I mean, I've played around with Bay Trail devices. They work like at a level that previous Atom processors have not worked.
Right. And what I think this points out is something very important about this claim that Chrome is the web. Okay? The idea of web versus normal software is now BS. You can run Unreal Engine 4 or Unity in a web browser. Right? So don't tell me that it's just the web. Because now the web can be as processor intensive or as not processor intensive as you want it to be. Because the whole point of Web 2.0 is browser as platform.
Well, and the other thing is that this Bay Trail processor has the battery life and the power to run these things in a way that these phone processors can't.
Right.
I mean, the Snapdragon processor is a great processor. Not for a full-blown desktop computer that's doing any kind of processing, even if it's just YouTube. If you just sit there and watch YouTube and Netflix all day, there's still a lot of processing going on in the background.
See, I don't know if it's actually a power issue so much as just a branding issue that Intel's trying to stake a claim.
Well, I do think
that
there is some of that Intel wants to have their little inside sticker on it.
Right, because...
And I assure you that Microsoft, if they can get Intel into... I think that Nadella will really move Microsoft more towards these kind of, Intel-based products with the backwards compatibility and kind of going back to he wants stuff to be on every single device.
Sure.
He does not want the shenanigans of, no, it's not going to be on this device just because reasons.
Well, I mean, he's an engineer, and that makes very little engineering sense.
So he and I, we're like this.
Sure. Sure.
Me and Nadella, we see eye to eye.
Sure. So speaking of tech execs seeing eye to eye, so the reporting on this story has gotten somewhat inflammatory. So let's start with some with the facts that were actually established.
Whoa, now.
Fact.
Whoa, facts?
Yeah, this is. I'm only running down facts that I can check have actually been established because of this story. Okay? Fact. Eric Schmidt and Sergey Brin exchanged cordial emails with U.S. General Alexander about an initiative called Enduring Security Framework, which brought together top tech executives and CEOs from companies including Apple, Microsoft, Intel, Google, and AMD. Okay? Fact. This initiative involved these and probably other companies, but that's not a fact. Working together with the U.S. government on cybersecurity threats such as BIOS hacking and mobile security. Fact. This involved high-level meetings between government and industry, sometimes at a secure facility near the San Jose airport. Fact. This story was broken by Al Jazeera America via a Freedom of Information request. Their coverage, this is the end of the facts. Their coverage implies an all too willing spirit from the CEOs, which is not actually supported by the evidence.
I had to stop reading that Al Jazeera article. I couldn't finish it.
I read it. And Al Jazeera has their kind of own bent in how they approach U.S. politics, and I get that. But the way they pitch this story is that because they are so kind in these emails, that means they're actually happy to be there. And I have written way too many all too kind emails about things I absolutely despise.
It's called professionalism.
Oh, right.
Y'all.
Especially when you're like, I'm sorry, if you're Eric Schmidt and you're communicating with the head of the NSA, what are you going to do? Say something mean to him? That's a terrible decision.
Right.
Get lost, lose your face.
So like,
they could totally kill you.
So they went to. So they went to the.
I don't know the Russians. I don't know.
But so they went to these meetings and they got security briefings and they worked with the government to solve cybersecurity threats. Let's keep in mind this has nothing to do with this has nothing to do directly with surveillance. This wasn't setting up the surveillance system. This was, hey, there's a threat. We should work together to fix it. And guess what? I actually want them to do that. Right?
Right.
I want anyone who can work on cybersecurity threats to work on cybersecurity threats. Apparently, the BIOS hacking thing was to fight back against the Chinese. Okay, so it established a relationship that may have made the spying thing easier, but theoretically, this is all happening before Google knows that the NSA has tapped their undersea cable.
Well, there's also the fact that we can't really know. This was a point that was brought up in the was it the TechCrunch article? That's the Gizmodo article. That's going to be linked in the show notes. That's like, we really have no idea what the communication is between these companies, because at some point the companies themselves can't tell us.
Right.
Because
Right. Well,
when you're giving information, when you're communicating with the NSA at all, you cannot say, this is what I talked to the NSA about.
I mean, Google did confirm that they attended these meetings.
Right, but there's a difference between saying we attended these meetings and this is what we
Here's
like,
the
did
agenda
at these,
and the minutes.
Right.
at these meetings.
But I mean, even in these leaked emails, it's talking about cybersecurity threats. And I don't have a problem with that.
Right, and this seems to assume that, just because they were talking and getting along with the NSA on this particular issue and this particular scenario, that clearly means that they're talking and getting along with them on everything, which I think is just faulty logic, saying, okay, because they are helping them out here, then clearly they help them out with something else. And
Right.
that's not how business works.
And so Al Jazeera did this really weird thing where they stitched together a whole bunch of facts. So they said, okay, the Microsoft and them helped with the BIOS hacking issue. And Snowden talked about how the NSA was using some BIOS hacking. Ergo, those two things are related.
No.
Not necessarily. Possibly.
No,
but
but
you
that's
don't have the confirmation for that.
Right, and there's not enough. You don't have enough data.
Right.
There's not enough. There's not enough information.
Right. Like, I'm not going to stick up for the NSA.
Sure,
like,
it
I mean,
could be.
it's-
It could totally be related.
It's
Right.
kind of like saying, Trey and I were having a conversation about going out and buying a ladder. And then, several weeks later, someone used a ladder to climb into Jimmy's window and steal his stuff. And since Trey and I had had a
It would totally be
conversation
Trey,
about a
though.
ladder,
No.
then,
But it would be Trey.
well, that aside, clearly it was me who stole
Bad
Jimmy's
example.
stuff because I was talking about ladders and a ladder was used.
But,
like,
But also,
what?
this is one of those, people seem to think that there has to be a hard line between friend and enemy.
Right.
Just generally speaking. I talk about this on several other shows, too. But that there has to be this hard line between friend and enemy, right? That Samsung and Apple, it's really weird that they shouldn't be, that they're suing each other and also buying stuff from each other, right?
Because it's mutually beneficial for them to buy stuff from each other and to sue the shit out of each other.
Right. And it's just a complicated relationship.
Right, and we see examples of that in every other relationship in the universe. So it seems ridiculous to say that, well, take relationships between two countries. We have lots of issues with China as far as cybersecurity and hacking and spying and all that stuff. But guess what? We do a lot of trading with China.
We're their biggest trade partner.
So,
and they own a good chunk of our national debt.
And something, again, when you're saying on other shows that Trey has brought up on other shows about politicians in the United States, former presidents who have probably said nasty things about each other can all come together and get along and talk about things they have in common, because relationships are not totally black and white. And if we don't expect them to be that way between people and between countries, why would we expect that between companies?
Or even
that
between
are-
a company and the U.S. government.
The U.S. government. And guess what? It makes a lot of sense because it's not like U.S. corporations never help out the government, right? Boeing and Lockheed build all of the jets, and that's a U.S. company that also has
Boeing's
private
been building the C-130 since the 1960s.
right, and the B-52 since the 1950s, and so actually they both first flew in 1954, I think.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty sure I am.
Sure.
Well, and I also, there's a certain level of hypocrisy here from the press as well. We have cases like, the case that we talked about with the Supreme Court rulings on the Aereo stuff, where people are saying, oh no, they're old people, and they're in the government, so they can't possibly know things about technology. But now when we have an instance of government consulting technology experts to deal with technology issues, we're saying, oh no, why are they talking to them? That doesn't make sense. So we're now faulting people for being informed, whereas before we were faulting people for not being informed.
Okay, two things.
Bugging
One,
me.
did first fly in 1954.
I stand
Two,
corrected. It was Lockheed.
It's Lockheed.
But the B-52 first
Is
flew
Boeing.
1952.
Oh, excuse me. I stand corrected.
April 15th, 1952, actually, and it was first introduced in February 1955.
Interesting.
Whereas the C-130 was not actually officially introduced until December 57.
57, but did first
This is
fly in
very
54.
important
Yeah,
to the NSA story.
Right.
Tonight on the text last call Planecast.
Yeah, we should just have a
Any
podcast
voice
all
you
about,
have carry around here.
all about planes. Right. Hey, look, we want, in a certain extent, the government is really good at bringing in private companies where they're good. Now, this goes too far. Sometimes it's stuff like Halliburton and all of this, but that's not this. This is not the weird ward profiteering stuff. This is technology companies know more than the government and have much
About
better
technology. How about that?
How about that? And they used that to solve cybersecurity threats that I want the experts solving. This makes sense. This is another one of those stories.
They're just trying to trump up. This is people flip out about NSA.
That is the media trying to capitalize on, whatever is left of Snowden hype.
Yep.
It's been so long since we've had good Snowden hype. Let's see if we can dig
we
just
got
a
these
little bit of
emails
that back up.
where Eric Schmidt
from Al Jazeera America is just so leading and just odd.
Let me read you. I'll read you the first paragraph, and then we do need to move on for me to rant about something else. But hold on, I clipped
That was something very similar.
well, at least
that.
about the press. Yeah, this is clearly I'm just mad at journalists tonight. Okay, so this is the lead paragraph, right? Which in journalism is the most important paragraph you write. Email exchanges between National Security Agency Director General Kenneth Alexander and Google executives Sergey Brin and Eric Schmidt suggest a far cozier working relationship between some tech firms and the U.S. government than was implied by Silicon Valley brass after last year's revelations about NSA spying.
I think I got three lines past that, and I
Make it
gave up and
sound
went to the Gizmodo
scandalous.
article. I could not keep reading it. And the Gizmodo article actually has, this is the email.
Yeah, I mean, Al Jazeera runs those at the bottom, too. I mean, that's why I would only read facts that were confirmed by the emails. Because the rest of this is just them interpreting it with people who don't really like the NSA. So, one of the key interviews used in the article is the Electronic Frontier Foundation. I like the EFF, but the EFF is not going to give the NSA a fair hearing on this. Right? This is just, it's not... And just the fact that they used polite language seems to just be this, damning evidence to Al Jazeera.
How dare they be professional?
So, speaking of how dare they be professional, is this week's last call. So you want to hear me get mad? Listen to this story.
Yay, train
Oh, I'm
hands.
excited.
Everybody buckle in.
I'm not actually mad about the basic story here. So, the basic facts are, Evernote, the popular note-syncing cloud software...
That Trey doesn't like.
That I don't like, but plenty of people do. This is not a rant against Evernote. I just don't like it. Is now partnering with LinkedIn, the social network I don't like.
Sometimes I forget that I have that.
For-
When they send me an
I
email.
need to update the picture on LinkedIn.
Career-focused and job-syncing people. And so they made this deal so that Evernote will handle business card scanning for LinkedIn. By linking your LinkedIn account to your Evernote account, users will be able to see LinkedIn data pop up automatically every time they scan a business card. So, pretty cool. Evernote's technology is based on optical character recognition, so it reads what's on the business card and then looks that person up on LinkedIn and then sucks the information in. That's pretty cool.
That's really smart.
It's a lot better than LinkedIn's outgoing card scanning software, Card Munch, which used humans on the back end to do
It has a terrible name.
And it has a terrible name.
It has a silly name.
So it wasn't scalable, it wasn't good, and so now Evernote is the go-to source for card scanning for LinkedIn. Great. So Evernote gets a plug into the corporate world they didn't have before, and LinkedIn gets some pretty awesome technology behind it. This is a pretty cool deal.
This is a great deal for both of them.
Right. So this is a great deal for both of them. It's a cool use of technology. It's actually kind of creative. I'm pretty happy with it. I don't like either of these services, but they can do some good things. This is not a black or white
You're
world.
also not a person who hires people a lot, so
I did recently, but yeah,
necessarily apply to you.
Right. So this isn't a deal. So this is a cool thing. What's been funny, or not so funny, depending how you look at it, is tech journalists have punctuated the coverage of the story with some version of the line, well, who uses business cards anymore? This question, like, who talks on the phone anymore? Or who needs physical media? Or why doesn't everyone just stream everything? Or who doesn't want augmented reality? This is one of those questions that proves to me that the tech journalists are essentially have their head so far up their own asses, it's remarkable that they can breathe. Not everyone in the country lives in Silicon Valley or lives in New York with perfect internet, and where the fact that you can just give out your Twitter handle or your Google Plus handle as a way is better than a business card. It's
not only that it's professionally acceptable and people understand what you're doing.
No one would make sense of me if that's what I did. So not everyone works in the tech industry, and some people actually need to use physical things in the physical world. Not everyone can stream anything, because I don't have enough. I have 0.36 megabytes down during peak hours in the country. You think streaming media makes a lot of sense? Hell no! Not everyone lives in this ideal questions. VCs should start asking people, not, what's your business plan, but does this work in Iowa? Because most of this crap doesn't. But you know what works in Iowa? This does. So, Jimmy, who needs business cards anymore?
Me. I have 2 boxes of, they're significantly less now, but 1,000 business cards apiece.
Yeah.
I use them. So, this is the fascinating thing that I find about this. In the professional world, how this works when you're sitting down in a meeting with people that you are either meeting for the first time or whatever, everyone sits down. I bring a stack of business cards like so, and I'm holding, for those of you on the audio, I'm holding a stack of business cards up, and then for the first 30 seconds of the meeting, you just pass I'll take my stack, I'll just hand it to the person next to me, and you just pass out business cards.
It's like swaps.
Right, because if I told some 80-year-old woman at my church to follow me on Google Plus, to circle me on Google Plus, she might have she has probably heard of the Twitters.
Your church doesn't even keep computerized records of things.
Right.
So
we have hand-done spreadsheets.
Wow. We had today, my class, we had our last lunch at the place where we've been working for our community-based vocational training, and one of my students who's graduating this year was mentioning he's looking to get a job, and the manager we've been working with said, oh yeah, you can definitely use me as a reference, just remind me and I'll give you one of my business cards on your way out.
Right. In the real world, in the does this work in Iowa world, this is as dumb as rejecting the business card is as dumb as promoting Google Glass.
The other thing you do with this is I give you this, you flip it over, you write where you were when you got this, and now you have a GPS location of where you met this person.
And this is not an original thought of mine. I read this somewhere, and God, I wish I could credit them as I don't remember. But you want to know what's universally readable? A business card, right? You don't need a special app. You don't need a membership to a thing. You don't need a web browser. A business card. I can use a business card in places that have no internet. You can use a business card when you don't have that. What if you're not on LinkedIn? Or what if you're not on Twitter? Or what if you're not using Google Plus? So most people. Specifically for Google Plus.
It's a ghost town.
And Facebook, I still don't think is an acceptable professional contact.
No,
I mean, I use it as Facebook chat professionally, but that's just because I know that's where people are. So, I mean, this is just one of those, pull your heads. This is why honestly, this is why I do this show.
You're in the bubble, y'all.
Because, screw the bubble. It's so stupid. And it's so stupid that this is considered acceptable that you can just like, oh, who uses that anymore? If you looked outside, have you looked outside?
I'm in a fairly technologically, not even advanced, but like we use a significant amount of horsepower to do what we do.
And you are designing things based on very hardcore technology.
We're an engineering firm. We do real technology stuff. And we have to have a high level understanding of a lot of different things. And you know what we don't do? We don't do frickin' Twitter following and LinkedIn as a secondary thought. And
LinkedIn is, honest to God, only when you need a job.
LinkedIn is literally only a secondary thought. Even people that are looking for a job are like, I'll update my LinkedIn, I guess.
Right. So,
everyone has to have one, but that's kind of why LinkedIn exists.
Right. Right. So, all of this is to sum up, like, this is a cool thing that Evernote and LinkedIn have done. This makes sense in the real world of real business. And I get, like, I'm a pastor, and how much do I know about real business? But, I grew up surrounded by it.
I'm in real business. So.
And you're in real business.
Small businessman.
And this makes a lot of sense. And the tech industry and the tech press is so quick to jump on, oh, you don't need that anymore. You just have your smartphone. Well, that doesn't always work.
No, I don't.
Or norms will change so that wearing Google Glass...
has a smartphone.
Or that wearing... there's 65% of phones sold at this point, worldwide.
We're pretty good. I mean, we're basically there.
I mean, it's not the have a smartphone issue even. It's just... It's thinking about how this stuff...
5 years ago, so...
How this stuff gets used in the real world. That gets left out of the entire conversation around wearables, around augmented reality, around even driverless cars. It's just, I wish the tech industry would think. So on that note, it's time to get out of here. Thank you so much for joining us on a fairly long edition, considering we only covered 5 stories, of Tech's Last Call. If you have any feedback, podcast at techslastcall.com, facebook.com/techslastcall, pinterest.com/techslastcall, or at techslastcall on the Twitters. However you find us, you'll be seeing us on the interwebs.